All right, this is our Way Up Sportsman. It's Lamont. We are back with another podcast episode. Man, today we got to talk about it, man. We got a sports story we need to speak on. This another YouTube drama kind of formulating out of the blue. I think there's some prime characters behind the scenes that are incentivized to kind of push this drama for no certain reason, and we're going to talk about it today. It's the Gilbert Arenas, Kwame Brown saga. We know that. We know that Vlad TV recently did an interview with Gilbert Arenas, and he asked Gilbert Arenas about Kwame Brown being a bust in the NBA, and Kwame Brown really gave a very intriguing perspective on what he thought Kwame Brown experienced in the NBA. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to break down some of Gilbert Arenas' past statements on Kwame Brown. We want to check consistency. Is he consistent with his narrative on any takes that he has, and then kind of compare it to what he said on Vlad TV, because maybe the inconsistencies, if there are any inconsistencies in his take, maybe these are some of the things that drive the beefs or confusion, as we've seen Kwame Brown and Casino for Life both attack Gilbert Arenas over his statements about Kwame Brown when he played in the NBA. Before we get started, make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to the video if you haven't done so already. We're grinding to 50K subscribers. We'll be there soon, right? When we continue to drop news like this, when we break it down to this level, and when we look to call out the people kind of pushing these false narratives in the sports world, I mean, that's how we're going to get there. But again, today, we got to talk about this particular issue, Gilbert Arenas and Kwame Brown. Where did this all start? All right. Well, all of this originated back when Kwame Brown had a beef with Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes. Obviously, he did not like what they said to Jeannie Buss on the All the Smoke podcast. Those comments about him being involved in that trade for Paul Gasol. All right, we know what that eventually evolved into, and that evolved into a particular beef between those men. All right, that seems to be squashed, and it seems like all parties have kind of moved past that. However, they were able to do that. But one thing I want to go back to is, around that time, the All the Smoke podcast also had Gilbert Arenas on the show. And they also spoke on Kwame Brown and what they felt Kwame Brown was in the NBA. So the first thing we got to do is, man, we got to pull up the drawing board, because before we evaluate anything that Gilbert Arenas said in the Vlad TV interview, we have to kind of retroactively go back and check out some of his past statements on similar topics when Kwame Brown's name has been brought up, right? And we want to know what his stance was then, and then compare it to what his stance was when he spoke to Vlad TV. So let's go ahead and get to the drawing board and check out Gilbert Arenas on the All the Smoke podcast speaking on Kwame Brown.
Matt said Kwame was one of the coldest, one of the best number one picks ever of all time.
He could have been. He could have been, and this is why. Imagine being an 18-year-old kid getting drafted number one by your idol.
Yeah.
And your idol is Michael Jordan.
Right.
We know Michael Jordan. We know Michael Jordan's personality.
Right.
Imagine that personality
slapped him in the face,
going towards a 18-year-old kid. Just bullying him, and you got to remember, he's around his peers. You're not his peer.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're not his peers. These are his peers. So when you're making him look little to his peers, he loses his confidence. So when I get there, he doesn't have confidence. You know what I mean? So it's trying to build this man child up. And when I mean man child, you're talking about just a big country human.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So physically I called him the show pony. He's a show horse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He probably couldn't race looks
Look good, though.
look good there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So in games, you will see
You see flashes.
oh, he's gone, but then you have a flash of trauma. You have a flash. You have a flash of trauma. You're like, and I who he could have been. He could have been more like an Anthony Davis style. You're talking about a 7-foot guy who was probably the second fastest on our team. Like just straight 100. Oh, he was gone. Small hands. So he was more guard-like. You know what I mean? So when he decided to take off, he's gone, ball still there. You know what I mean? But I just think it was like, that's what I'm saying. But like the ball was still there. He was gone.
Though.
But it was more the trauma than anything. And it was more like, even though Jordan left, he still needed a fresh start. Because once
Right there, we have it right there. Gilbert Arenas' initial statements on the All the Smoke podcast months ago. These were statements that happened months ago, well before the Vlad TV interview, well before this excess drama between, Vlad TV, Carcino, and Gilbert Arenas currently right now. His statements back then. And again, take from them what you want. All right, here at FYF Sports, man. That means F your feelings, forget your feelings, remove your feelings from it. I think Gilbert Arenas' initial take on Kwame Brown was a fair and honest assessment, right? He gave accountability to Kwame Brown. He gave accountability to the Wizards organization and Michael Jordan for their failures, right? Potentially Michael Jordan's attitude towards developing young players. Right, he took all these things into consideration, even going as far as comparing Kwame Brown to the likes of being potentially a player like Anthony Davis. I mean, that's a hell of a comparison. To tell somebody that at your potential best, you could be Anthony Davis, I think that's a huge compliment. Now, there's some other things that unfolded in his comments when he said that he had small hands. Well, factually, that's correct. For a big man at his size, he did have smaller hands. Did it affect his ability to rebound and handle the ball well? Well, all we have to do is look to the highlights, look to what we saw on the court. And Kwame Brown did struggle with catching passes. He did struggle in traffic, right? He did struggle with pushing the ball up the court in transition. So some of the things that Gilbert Arenas said, although they're funny, although some, especially you Kwame Brown fans, would deem them as offensive, they are factual in that sense. And he's not the only one that's made comments to that degree. There have been scouts and even people in the media who've given similar sentiments about his game. And that was back then when Kwame Brown played, and then currently to this day as we watch older clips of what we saw when he played in Washington and LA. So I think his original take, again, he wasn't going to immediately jump on the bash Kwame Brown and just simply call him a bust bandwagon like I have. I'm one of those who simply said, you are what you are. You are what the product that you put on the court, right? There are no excuses, injuries, organization, whatever. If you didn't get it done, in my eyes, if you didn't get it done and you're a number 1 draft pick, you're a bust. Gilbert Arenas doesn't have that same sentiment. He looks at things a bit differently, and I actually respect a lot of his takes. I actually use a lot of his talking points on our live streams. So and I think based on his initial take, he's making one of the better cases for Kwame Brown not being a bust. Now, could I argue that? Could I go back and forth with him on that? Yes, I would love to potentially be able to do that. But out of all the cases that I've heard a lot of cases when people try to say Kwame Brown was not a bust. Some people say, oh, well, he made a lot of money. So many things that are not basketball related. They try to bring these things into the fold. Oh, well, you didn't play in the NBA. Some of these weird arguments that make no sense. Gilbert Arenas, in his initial take on the All the Smoke podcast, actually made one of the strongest arguments that I've heard to date as to why Kwame Brown should not be considered a bust. All right, now we're going to go from there. Let's move from there on to now. All right, Vlad TV recently did an interview, and in that interview, this interview was really focused on talking about Gilbert Arenas and his career, his time in the NBA before and after, what led up to it. And in the midst of that conversation, Vlad TV asked a very critical question. He kind of went off topic and asked about Kwame Brown briefly. And he made a comment saying that Kwame Brown was a bust. All right. And I want you guys to hear Gilbert Arenas' response to that comment, because I think he did a really good job of kind of doubling down on his initial take. But I want you guys to listen to his actual take, and you make the deduction, and we're going to come back and break it down from there. Hey, let's get a listen to Gilbert Arenas speaking on Kwame Brown on Vlad TV.
Even though I'm like,
who was the number one draft that year?
Number one was Kwame Brown. So he was a high school kid. So I was part of the high school draft, which I was still, 19. So I'm still young. So we had, that's Eddie Curry's in that, Paul Gasol, Tyson Chandler. So Tyson was the only player I actually knew, and that was from my high school days.
Right. And ultimately, Kwame Brown really didn't live up to the expectations that a number one draft pick was supposed to live up to, if you think about it.
You have to, okay, so when it comes to high school, you have to grade them on a curve. Because I've paid attention to so much basketball. Like it's the potential.
Yeah.
So a high school kid, a young kid, you're getting drafted on potential. So when you're saying out of that class, he had the most potential out of all those high school kids.
Right.
So if they redo the draft today and we put ourselves back knowing what we know now, he still goes top 3.
Okay, fair enough.
They'll probably take Paul Gasol number 1.
Yeah.
Maybe Zach Randolph number 2. He still has a better career than the other high school kids. Like you're talking about, like Diop was in that class. Joe Johnson probably go top 5.
Yeah.
I'll probably be somewhere around top. Me and Tony Parker being there. We're guards, so we're not going to be, first one to grab is always going to be a big man.
Okay, fair enough. And
all right, and there we have it right there. Gilbert Arenas' comments on Vlad TV. You guys heard it live and direct. His actual words. I think he was very, even though it was a short segment, he was very to the point about his answer, and I think he stayed consistent with his original thoughts. I think he kind of added to some of his sentiments. And again, even though I don't 100% agree with his take, I think he's one of the few to make one of the strongest arguments. I think he's even made a better argument than Kwame Brown himself as to why Kwame Brown is not a bust. Right? He said, and this is a point that I never considered, and this was potentially, again, if this was a debate, this is where he would have won up me in the debate. And he says with high school draft picks, you have to grade them on a curve. And when I thought about that, I said, you know what? You do have to grade high school draft picks who get drafted into the NBA on a curve, because there's a much bigger margin for error. All right. That margin for error when you draft a player gets smaller as they progress through college. Let's say if they go play overseas or whatever. But the more you see them at higher levels of play, the margin for error in drafting them gets smaller. And when you have a guy with Kwame Brown who, with regards to intangibles, with regards to your length, your size, your speed, as he mentioned in the first video, he had the makeup of what everyone thought would be a franchise player with his size, but once you get to the league, no one knows what you are until you step on the court and play. There are other factors, obviously health, obviously your mental makeup, all right, your team, your organization, player development, how much you're willing to work on your game yourself. Some of these things there is no measuring stick for until you're drafted, until you put on a team, right? Until you're put around a set of veterans, and then you start to mold your legacy in the NBA. So I think Gilbert Arenas right here has not said anything disrespectful. I think he's actually made a stronger case for many to believe that Kwame Brown was not a bust. Again, these are debates that we've had on this channel, right? Everyone knows my stance on this particular topic. I feel that irregardless of your circumstances, irregardless of any outside factors, if you get drafted at those top positions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 through 10, and you do not pan out to be that franchise player that these organizations believe you would be, then we have to label you a bust. I mean, I had that conversation with a former number 1 draft pick in Greg Oden. And Greg Oden told me he felt that because of the injuries, he was a bust. right? And so my narrative is kind of formulated based off some conversations that I've had with pros, right? Gilbert Arenas obviously is an NBA pro, even probably with a bit more a better perspective than I may have, because he actually was on that Wizards team. He knew what it was like to be on the same floor with Jordan, be around Jordan, be in the locker room with Michael Jordan. So I think he understood some of the pressures that went along with that. And he even talked about some of those pressures of Michael Jordan being there. All right. But I think he made one of the strongest arguments for Kwame Brown to not be a bust, to not be labeled a bust. And it's primarily because he was a high school draft pick, and that margin for error as a high school draft pick is much wider. And we have to, I'm assuming, and when I heard him kind of elaborate on this a bit more, he was basically saying you need to judge the high school picks together, right? He compared them to Diop, a guy who was also a scrub in the NBA, right? When we compare him to other guys like that, well, Kwame Brown doesn't look so bad. Yes, Kwame Brown had over 10 years in the league, right? Ultimately became a solid vet to come off your bench. Injury-riddled career, couldn't stay healthy. Early on in his career, dealt with injuries, dealt with sports-induced asthma. But at the end of the day, in my eyes, some of these factors are controllable factors. And the product that we saw on the court, some of the things that we heard Kobe Bryant say, obviously we've all heard what Stephen A. Smith had to say. Again, I've come to my conclusion, but I have to give much respect to a guy like Gilbert Arenas for not just jumping on the bandwagon of just absolutely calling Kwame Brown a scrub, calling him out. And so after hearing both takes, I do not believe that Gilbert Arenas said anything that contradicted anything he said in the past. I don't think he said anything that was disrespectful to Kwame Brown. The only thing I think he did was actually make a strong case as to why Kwame Brown should not be labeled a bust. You're talking about a man in Kwame Brown who has the name Busty Bust in his own YouTube channel. He's actually making an argument for a person like Kwame Brown to remove that Busty Bust tag from his own YouTube name. Right? He's actually making a case for a guy like Kwame Brown, a man who went on Ticket TV talking to Antisocial, said that he wasn't a very good basketball player. But he's actually making the case as to he could have potentially been as good as Anthony Davis. And this is an NBA player saying these things. So when I hear those things, and then when I listen to what Casino for Life had to say, right, and going directly at Gilbert Arenas with some of the things that he had to say, and then, the funniest thing about Casino is now making a string and series of videos as if there's a back and forth going on here. Gilbert Arenas responded to me. Gilbert Arenas did this. It's only you just making videos about Gilbert Arenas. There is no exchange. There is no dialogue, right? There is no real dialogue. Yes, he responded to multiple people's comments on IG on a Kwame Brown post, but outside of that, there really has not been no exchange or dialogue, right? And I think it's things like that because, again, the person you want to send your ire towards in this particular case would be Vlad TV. Vlad TV, in a conversation that was strictly supposed to be about Gilbert Arenas, his career, how he got to the league, what he's, obviously the gun situation, what he did after that, amassing a lot of money in the NBA. The conversation went from that, and for about 1 to 2 minutes, Vlad went off topic just to go bring up Kwame Brown, and he tried to bait Gilbert Arenas into saying something negative about the man, and Gilbert Arenas actually shut it down, and in the midst of shutting it down, actually gave one of the greatest takes that I've heard and one of the greatest arguments that I've heard as to why Kwame Brown should not be labeled a bust. And here at FYF Sports, that's actually called a max ether. When you're backed in a corner, when you're in a situation where you didn't see something coming, he did not see this question coming, and it's just thrown at him just like that. And he not only answers the question, but he answers the question. Normally, Vlad, when he feels that he has you backed in the corner, he'll double down with more and more questions just to get statements and sound bites out of you. As soon as Gilbert Arenas answered this question, there were no other follow-up questions that Vlad TV could make. He had to move on to the next topic because Gilbert Arenas I think he did an excellent job of answering the question in a manner that exposed a lot of truth. It even opened up a lot to me. I now have to kind of go back and relook at that 2001 draft, right? Maybe I have to kind of reanalyze how I look at labeling certain players as a bust, because even here at FYF Sports, I have to be open to change. I can't even have an opinion locked in stone with regards to what I believe a bust is. And if you make a strong enough case, I have to take that into consideration. He made a strong argument as to why Kwame Brown was not a bust. Yet, Kwame Brown and Carcino for Life both have flipped on Gilbert Arenas, throwing ire at him as if he is the one that sparked up this drama or said anything negative or disrespectful towards Kwame Brown, which is extremely odd. So again, I would love to have these people on the panel, man. Carcino for Life, obviously Kwame Brown. I obviously it's very unlikely that these two would actually pull up to a live stream with me on it. Y'all know how it is here at FYF Sports, man. The Max Ether is always waiting, and it's cool, calm, cool, and collected as we are. The way we're able to allow people to sit there and talk and kind of ether themselves, people like that won't pull up over here, especially when they're causing confusion in the streets. And so when we look at all of these situations, the last thing that I wanted to speak on was there's a very odd similarity in all of these beefs involving Kwame Brown. Where obviously we have this particular beef with Gilbert Arenas. But who's the face behind this beef? Obviously, it's Vlad TV. There's very little ire or smoke being thrown in the direction of Vlad TV. People are being very cautious, kind of walking around how they use Vlad TV's name in these YouTube streets, and especially with Kwame Brown. It seems like he's just completely looked past anything, the way Vlad TV instigated this particular topic, and he's throwing all of his heat, even going as far as having a Instagram back and forth with Gilbert Arenas on this particular topic, saying even in those comments going as far as saying that Gilbert Arenas is the one that cost him money. Just egged on this beef between Gilbert Arenas and Kwame Brown. It was who sparked it? It was Vlad TV. But yet Carcino for Life nor Kwame Brown, they're not directing their entire focus on a guy like Vlad TV. You're talking about a guy in Vlad TV who's essentially been a culture vulture in our community. I'm really surprised. I'm really surprised that Kwame Brown hasn't went at Vlad TV much sooner with some of the takes, some of the things that he's done, right? Some of the ways he tries to set some of these rappers up with lines of questioning where they can, where they could literally, find themselves in legal trouble or legal battles with some of the things that they say. I mean, he's been a controversial for years. I mean, that would be and on top of the fact that would bring you a massive amount of clout, and we both know that they're both clout chasers seeking that type of clout. So again, why did they duck the smoke with Vlad TV? Why are they throwing their ire at Gilbert Arenas? I don't know. When we look to the past situations with Steven Jackson, when we look at that situation, Matt Barnes. But who was the face behind that beef? It was Jeannie Buss talking about a trade. Yet no ire went to Jeannie Buss. Maybe a few comments here or there. Yes, a few comments here or there. But Carcino for Life and Kwame Brown made sure to keep the Buss family name out of their mouths, out of their titles of their videos. They made sure to keep those names out of their mouth as they attacked who in the situation. They found the black man involved in the situation and they chose to attack that person. So you have Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson. The white face remains unattacked. That's Vlad TV. In this particular situation, and in another particular situation, Steven Jackson, Matt Barnes, Jeannie Buss, they made sure to keep her name out of their mouth, or even the Buss family's name out of their mouth, but they attacked Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes. All right. When you look to even a guy like Stephen A. Smith, right? A lot of people say this man is a coon or however you want to label him, right? But when I do my research, the Washington Post and Sally Jenkins The Washington Post and Sally Jenkins went much more personal and slanderous towards the man Kwame Brown, calling the man stupid, said he couldn't wash his own clothes, said he needed an adult babysitter to live in his home. You're talking about years and years of this type of slander. And the only thing Stephen A. Smith said was that you're a scrub on the basketball court. But yet again, Carcino for life and Kwame Brown extremely calculated in not mentioning the Washington Post or the name Sally Jenkins. Yes, maybe they mentioned it a few times. Maybe they talked about it once or twice here or there. But they made sure you see no Sally Jenkins in the video titles. You don't see the Washington Post in any video titles. You see them simply going at Stephen A. Smith and ESPN. They will, and they're not afraid to put his name in the video titles. Once again, another black man. In all of these situations, 3 situations that I've named, all of the white media power figures involved are not getting called out. I mean, unless you're here at FYF Sports, we have no chill. We would definitely speak on these topics. We have no problem with calling a Vlad TV out. We have no problem with calling a Sally Jenkins out. We've talked about that. All right. We have no problem with calling, anybody who's behind the scenes instigating these types of beefs. We have no problem with calling them out. And as I showed you guys, and I want you guys to break it down yourself. I showed you guys both videos. I've showed both videos of Gilbert Arenas speaking on Kwame Brown. Did you find anything that he said disrespectful? And if you do, you have to explain how and why. Because I think, again, he is the only person out here. Steven Jackson didn't do it. Stephen A. Smith didn't do it. Matt Barnes didn't do it. He's the only player out here to actually make an educated take and give an educated take as to why Kwame Brown should not be labeled a bust. Right? He's given the best take on that particular topic. He's given a better take than what Kwame Brown even did to defend himself on this bust conversation. But yet he's the one being targeted, as disrespecting Kwame Brown, going against the grain, right? Being labeled a so-called agent, being used by Vlad. It's a very, very odd stance. Very odd. To me, all of it's just completely odd. Because nothing that Gilbert Arenas has said equates to slander or hate towards Kwame Brown. Yet Kwame Brown and Carcino for Life are both labeling in that way. Hey, you guys, let me know what you think about this video. Let me know what you think about Vlad TV, Gilbert Arenas, and all of these other drama-filled situations that seem to just always follow Kwame Brown. You guys, just let me know what you think about it. Let me know what you think, man. We're going to be going live. We're going to talk about it. Make sure you pull up to the live, whether you agree or disagree. I mean, the link to join the live panel is going to be there. I would love to hear from you guys about this particular topic because, man, I just think, Gilbert Arenas, I've been listening to him on his podcast for over the last couple of years. And I love some of his takes on basketball. I love it, the way he looks at the game. I love the way he sees the game. He's kind of changed some of my opinions already on some things that, I may have been misinformed on in the past. And in this particular topic right here, like I said, he gave one of the most interesting takes on the bust conversation with regards to Kwame Brown that I've ever heard. Did he sway your opinion? Did he give you a new outlook on it? All right, we're going to talk about it tonight in the live stream. Hey, but it's FYF Sports, man. It's been another great podcast episode. We're going to be back with more sports and news. But until then, it's FYF Sports, and we out.